Will Goldstein here, thekingscourt.com. And again, option to subscribe and hit that little button down there. It'll bring more people to this channel. And also there's an option, to always hit this channel to just go to the About page on this channel, and you'll see all the links there, and you can follow my music that way. You might even be able to use some of that music in your own services. Regardless of what church you're in, there you could probably find something. So it's spiritual music. So anyway, this is a World Unity series, and it's number 10. And the title of this video is Jainism and the 24 Tirthankaras called Supreme Preachers of Dharma. So the subtitle of this video could be The Jain Way of Life. Okay, so first of all, the colors in the Jain religion are, I'm pretty much wearing them, white, orange, red, green, and blue. And they represent the 5 supreme beings. So this is my option of green. So anyway, the symbols, there's 8 symbols in Jain. The main one is a swastika, and that represents heavenly, human, and hellish beings, and also subhuman beings, for example, flora or animal life. Okay, so we're going to get into Jainism now. So it's also could be called Jain Dharma, is an Indian religion tracing its spiritual concepts and history through the succession of 24 Tirthankaras, and those are supreme preachers of Dharma. So Rishbhanatha was the first supreme preacher of Jainism and establisher of the Ishvaku dynasty, known by its legendary king Ishvaku, and also known as the Solar Dynasty, or descendants of the sun, which means that this dynasty prays to the sun as their god and their originator, and along with the lunar dynasty. So the god, is it praying to the sun or the moon, or is it praying to the god of them? But it says there that they pray to the lunar and mostly the sun. So anyway, Rishbhanatha was the first in the current time cycle, being Rishbhanatha or Rishabhadeva, which I guess it seems like they're the same, whom the tradition holds to have lived millions of years ago. The 23rd Tirthankara is Parshvanatha, the earliest exponent of karma philosophy in recorded history. So apparently he's the one that they have at least recorded that he introduced the concept of karma. He and the historians date him between the 9th and 8th centuries BCE, whereas historians consider that he lived in the 8th or 7th century BC. Of course, they can't agree. And the 24th Tirthankara, the Mahavira, that's the 24th one, the last one, around 600 BCE, who practiced intense meditation and severe austerities for 12 and a half years and attained liberation. Again, that's from reincarnation, and taught that observance of the vows of ahimsa, nonviolence, satya, truth, asetya, non-stealing, brahmacharya, chastity, and aparigrata, non-attachment, are necessary for spiritual liberation. I'm not always going to give the words in Sanskrit. Sometimes I'll just give words. It's just easier in English. So Jainism is considered to be an eternal dharma with the Tirthankaras guiding every time cycle of the cosmology. So we have cycles that we're going through. So the 3 main pillars of Jainism, and there's 3 out of 5, are on ahimsa, nonviolence, and non-absolutism, and asceticism. Those are the main ones, 3 out of the 5 that I just said a moment ago. So Jain monks take 5 main vows. Just going to give you the English: non-violence, truth, not stealing, chastity, non-possessiveness. So as a result of this, they're predominantly lacto-vegetarian in their lifestyle, which basically translates to no meat or eggs, but they do eat dairy, because dairy is not killing the animal. Paras Parengroha Jivanam, the function of souls is to help one another, and this is the faith's main motto, translated as souls render service to one another. So we're out there to help each other. That's great. All life is bound together by mutual support and interdependence. Jains believe that every living being, from a plant or a bacterium to human, has a soul, all the way down to bacterium, has a soul, and the concept forms the very basis of Jainism. So everything in existence, all the way down to bacteria, like I just said, has a soul. And do not kill, so nonviolence. And it translates also into your actions, nonviolent actions. So the Namankara mantra is its most common and basic prayer, and is one of the oldest mantras in continuous practice. This is the first prayer recited by the Jains while meditating. The devotee first bows to the 5 supreme souls. The 5 supreme beings are, the first one, there's kind of a long description here, the Arihant. So the Arihant are the awakened souls who have attained Keval Jnana, which means omniscience in Jainism, and is roughly translated as complete understanding or supreme wisdom. So they're bowing to these. This is the first one. They're considered as Arihant, a jiva who has conquered inner passions such as attachment, anger, pride, and greed. Having destroyed the 4 inimical karmas, they realize pure self. So they are called Kevalans as they possess Kevala Jnana, a complete understanding or supreme wisdom, and is believed to be intrinsically quality of all souls. This quality is masked by karmic particles that surround the soul. So it's your karma that's surrounding your soul. They're particles, so they're like matter, but like light matter or matter or something that surround the soul. The Arihant is also called a Jina. So the 24 Tirthankaras or Jinas, so they're sort of like the supreme sort of beings, the legendary founding figures of Jainism in the present time cycle. They're awakened souls. And all Tirthankaras are Arihants, but not all Arihants are Tirthankaras, who is also called the Jina or victor in Jainism. They could be seen as a savior who has succeeded in crossing over life's stream of rebirths and has made a path for others to follow. They're like leading you across, kind of like Moses across the Red Sea. So he's leading them across. In the shallow waters, by the way. So he's considered a savior and spiritual teacher of the Dharma, a body of doctrine pertaining to the purification and moral transformation of humans. That's what Dharma is. So the word Tirthankara signifies the founder of a tirtha, and that's a shallow part of a body of water, just like I said, that may be easily crossed. So they're kind of guiding you to this shallow part of the water so that you can easily cross. And it's used to refer both to pilgrimage sites as well as to the 4 sections of the Sangha, which is the community of the pious. A tirtha provides the inspiration to enable one to cross over from the worldly engagement to the side of moksha, the highest and the noblest objective that a soul should strive to achieve. Therein lies a formidable passage across the sea of interminable births and deaths called samsara, described as mundane existence, a life full of suffering and misery, and hence it is considered undesirable and worth renunciation. So in other words, this life is full of misery and pain, so you're trying to end this cycle. Okay, to escape having to be reborn into this world. Siddhya are the souls which have been liberated from the birth and death cycle. So that's kind of a description. That's a long description of the first one they bowed to, because it included a whole bunch of words that I had to translate, because otherwise you wouldn't have any idea what I was talking about. So in order to give an accurate description, I had to give you all that. So that's the first bowing. The second bowing is the Akara, and that's the head of an order of ascetics who lead a life based on 12 kinds of austerities, 5 observances, and 6 essential duties. I'm not going to get into those. That's just what they do. Later on, I forgot whether there might be something on that. But again, these are who they're bowing to in the Namankara mantra, and it's a prayer that's recited, by the Jains. So the third one is upadhyaya, or preceptors, and they're like a teacher or a guru, so they're bowing to them. Then they bow to Muni or Jain monks and nuns, so there are nuns also. And the last one, the fifth one, because there's 5 of them that they bow to, and this prayer is the monks or sages in the world practicing samyak charitra, which is right conduct. So after the 5 acts of bowing, the practitioner also says that by bowing to all these 5 supreme souls, all of his or her karmas can get destroyed, and wishes for well-being of each and every living entity. The practitioner finally says that this mantra is the most auspicious one, or giving or being a sign of future success. So by doing this, that is a sign that they will have future success in the liberation of their souls. So Jainism is one of the oldest religions still practiced today. There's about 4.5 million in the 2011 census, so I don't know what it is now. It's largely in India, but it's also around the world in other places as well. So now we're getting into Jain philosophy. So Jainism is trans-theistic. It's theistic in this limited sense that gods exist but are irrelevant. So they do believe gods exist, but they're irrelevant as they are transcended by the moksha, the liberated ones who forecast that the universe evolves without violating the law of substance dualism, which means that the mind and body are composed of 2 ontologically different substances, and the actual realization of this principle plays out through the phenomena of both parallelism, and that's meaning more than one universe with a different substance and gods, and interactionism, for example, living, death, and rebirth. So that's some of the basics of their philosophy. Okay. So the biggie is the dualism of matter and soul. Okay, so you have physical substance, and then you have soul, which would be, I would say, light. So ontological facts concerning the metaphysics or nature of being. You have dravya, means substances or entity in Sanskrit. Jains believe the universe is made of 6 eternal substances. So there's sentient beings or souls, non-sentient beings or matter, the principle of motion, which is they call dharma, the principle of rest, which they call adharma, and space, akasa, and time, kala. So those again are ontological facts. That just has to do with the metaphysics or nature of being. So the last 5 of these are united as the ajiva, or non-living. So if you look at that list, most of those are non-living. So Jains distinguish a substance from a complex body or thing by declaring the former a simple indestructible element, that's a substance, while the latter is a compound made of one or more substances that can be destroyed. So, tativa is their soteriological facts pertaining to salvation. Tattva connotates a framework for salvation. According to Digambara Jains, there are 7 tattvas: the sentient or living, the insentient, the karmic influence to the soul, which is a mix of living and non-living, the bondage of karmic particles to the soul, the stoppage of karmic particles, the wiping away or past karmic particles, the liberation or moksha, and briefly there's good karma and bad karma. So it's all essentially, you have good karma and you have bad karma, and you're obviously trying to get rid of the bad karma. Okay. So, and that pertains to your salvation. So the true insight in Jain philosophy is considered as faith in the tattvas. The spiritual goal in Jainism is to reach moksha for ascetics, but for most Jain laypersons, it is to accumulate good karma that leads to a better rebirth and a step closer to liberation. So in other words, some are trying to escape coming back, and be reincarnated, and others say, nah, I just want to get a better lot next time around. In other words, I'm coming back, I can't escape too much bad karma, but maybe at least I won't go, down. Hopefully I'll go up in the ladder. So pramana, or epistemological facts, are concerning the theory of knowledge. Jain philosophy accepts 3 reliable means of knowledge. So how do we get knowledge? So there's correct knowledge is based on perception, inference, and testimony, which is basically the word of scriptures. So these ideas are elaborated in Jain texts, such as, so these are more of the scriptures now, the Tattvartha Sutra, meaning on the nature of reality. It's an ancient Jain text in Sanskrit, and the Parva Kanasara is a text composed by Jain monk Kunda Kunda in the 2nd century CE or later, and the title means essence of the doctrine or essence of the scripture, and it largely deals with the correct ascetic and spiritual behavior based on his dualism premise. So Nandi was a Jain Sanskrit poet believed to have lived in the 6th to 9th centuries CE period. He lived in the modern-day Indian state of Karnataka. And Yogavarini, of which I found there's no other references. So we're talking about scriptures, and I couldn't find anything on that one, but it's listed as part of the Jain religion. Some Jain texts add analogy as the 4th reliable means. So again, we're talking about how do you obtain knowledge. So in a manner similar to epistemological theories found in other Indian religions. So in Jainism, jhana, or knowledge, is said to be of 5 kinds. You have sensory knowledge, scriptural knowledge, clairvoyance, telepathy, and omniscience. So those are the levels of different kinds of knowledge. So they include, like I just said, even clairvoyance and telepathy. So according to the Jain text Tattvartha Sutra, the first 2 are indirect knowledge and the remaining 3 are direct knowledge. Now on soul and karma. So a bound and ever-changing soul is a self-evident truth. So the soul is bound and it's ever-changing. It's always moving up the ladder or it's moving down the ladder. That's a self-evident truth. There are numerous souls, but everyone has 3 qualities. So 3 qualities that souls have are consciousness. Then the most important one is bliss, and also vibrational energy. What's the vibe being emitted and the state of your soul? Are you in misery or are you in bliss? Okay, bliss is associated with all aspects of mysticism. Okay, so bliss and ecstasy is another word used in that context. So vibration draws karmic particles to the soul and creates bondages. So, but it is also what adds merit or demerit to the soul. So what ends up happening in your relations, that's either what you do, say, or how you act, or whatever, is it's bringing merit or it's bringing demerit to your soul. Souls exist as closed with materials bodies. So they see again that duality. So you have the soul, which I would say is light, and then it's clothed with the material bodies. And the soul is filling up the body through every part of your being. What does Jesus say? If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. It's basically the idea that the soul is encompassing all the way through. And if it's light, then it's a magnetic field that's giving you bliss. Basically, that's what it is, if you're in touch with it. So, karma is the universal law of cause and effect, and is envisioned as material, but subtle substance. So again, it's karma, so it's they consider it material, so it's kind of like attached to your soul. They can bind to the soul, travel with the soul in bound form between rebirths. It's kind of like your soul, and you're attached to is kind of like a hologram or something like that, and it's attached data to your light being, and it affects the suffering and happiness experienced by the jiva and the lokas, and that's the framework of the universe. Karma is believed to obscure and obstruct the innate nature and striving of the soul, as well as its spiritual potential in the next rebirth. So now we're getting to samsara. So samsara doctrine differs between Jainism and other Indian religions. So soul is accepted as a truth, as it is in Hinduism, but Buddhists, as I said in my Buddhist video, do not accept the concept of self. So the cycle of rebirths has a definite beginning and end in Jainism. Jain theosophy, which is a knowledge of God that may be attached through spiritual ecstasy, direct intuition, asserts that each soul passes through, listen to this, 8,400,000 birth situations as they circle through samsara, going through 5 types of bodies. So everyone is going through this list, okay, and they're cycling through in their rebirths. So there's earth bodies, there's water bodies, there's fire bodies, there's air bodies, there's vegetable lives, and it's constantly changing with all human and non-human activities, from rainfall to breathing. Harming any life form is a sin in Jainism, so they're really a lot about nonviolence, with negative karmic effects if you do. So Jainism states the souls begin in a primordial state, and they either evolve to a higher state or regress if driven by their karma. It further clarifies that incapable souls can never attain moksha liberation. So there are some that no matter how much they do, they're just incapable, they're just degenerates. The scriptures, the Judeo-Christian concepts would be they're just bound for wickedness. Or they're just in darkness and they just tend to stay there. It explains that the abode state, a soul that cannot attain the proper insight necessary for salvation, and therefore does not deserve and is not eligible for the final emancipation, because the soul is engrossed in the non-spiritual after an intentional and shockingly evil act or acts. So their life is just continuously bound up in rebellion and sin and wickedness, and so there is no escape for them. Okay? They're probably descending lower and lower and lower, according to this philosophy, down. Maybe they'll regress all the way down to an ant. Where you just step on them or crush them. Souls can be good or evil in Jainism, and according to Jainism, a siddha, or a liberated soul, has gone beyond samsara. He's at the apex, is omniscient, and remains there eternally. So there it says they remain there eternally. So in cosmology, the Jain texts propound that the universe consists of many eternal lokas, and that's basically realms of existence. As in Buddhism and Hinduism, both time and the universe are eternal, but the universe is transient, as is composed of body, matter, and time, which are considered separate from the soul. So in other words, it's like the Aristotelian concept that the universe has always been here. It wasn't really created. God didn't speak it into it. It's not ex nihilo. It wasn't spoken into being. It's just has always been there. So again, the universe is transient. It's composed of body, matter, and time, which are considered separate from the soul. Their interaction explains life, living, death, and rebirth. And in the Jain cosmic universe, there are 3 parts: the upper, middle, and lower worlds. So I didn't find which one we're in. I guess we're in the middle. I guess so 3 worlds. So Jainism states that kala, time, is without beginning and eternal. So there's always, God did not create time. He's not outside of time. Time has always existed. The cosmic wheel of time rotates ceaselessly. In this part of the universe, there are 6 periods of time within 2 eons or auras. And in the first eon, the universe generates, and in the next, it degenerates. So it's going up, and it's generating, and then it's declining. Thus, it divides the worldly cycle of time into 2 half cycles, ascending with progressive prosperity and happiness, and descending with increasing sorrow and immorality. So this is the nature of this cycle. It's getting better and better and better, and then when it reaches up like its apex, it starts to degenerate, and it's like a wave. It's going up and down in these ways. It states that the world is currently in the 5th aura of Avasparini, full of sorrow and religious decline, where the height of living beings shrinks. After the 6th aura, the universe will be reawakened in a new cycle. So again, it's about these cycles. So in other words, when you're down, you can only get better and better and better until you get really good, and then you feel really secure in yourself, and then you descend and get worse and worse and worse until you're so miserable that the only place you can go is back up again. There you go. So God in Jainism is a transtheistic religion, and that holding that the universe was not created and will exist forever. It's independent, having no creator, governor, judge, or destroyer. And this, it is unlike the Abrahamic religions and the theistic strands of Hinduism, but similar to Buddhism. So it's kind of like in Buddhism, it's like, the unanswerable questions. So it's like, we can't know for sure, so let's just avoid it. In other words, you can fret about it all you want, but you're never going to get any closer to the truth about it because there's no way of really knowing. So they just kind of leave it out of the picture, and then they prefer to, refer more to their, enlightened beings. So, however, Jainism believes in the world of heavenly and hellish beings. So there is a world of heavenly and hellish beings who are born, die, and are reborn like earthly beings. Okay, so they're amongst us. The souls with good karma live happily in the body of a heavenly celestial. So there is something better than this world for if you have really good karma, and a heavenly celestial that kind of infers a heavenly sphere. And they possess a more transcendent knowledge about material things and can anticipate events in the human realm, so they got more knowledge about what's happening. Once their past karma merit is exhausted, though, their souls are reborn again as humans, animals, or other beings. So in other words, you get all the benefits of the good karma, and once all that good karma has existed, you start the cycle all over again. The perfect enlightened souls with a body are called Arihants. They are the victors. And perfect souls without a body are called siddhas, liberated souls. So there are some that do liberate. Only a soul with human body can attain enlightenment and liberation. So that's what it's all about. You have a human body, so you're trying to be liberated from the human body and be enlightened. The liberated beings are the supreme beings and are worshipped by all heavenly, earthly, and hellish beings who aspire to attain liberation themselves. So the liberated beings are the ones that are worshipped more than God, because God is unknowable, and it seems like, at least in their context. So salvation and liberation. So purification of soul and liberation can be achieved through the path of the 3 jewels. So, and the 3 jewels are the correct view, which means it has to do with faith and acceptance of the truth of the soul. Correct knowledge, meaning undoubting knowledge of the tattvas, or the principle of karma. So accepting this is what's happening, the principle of karma. Correct conduct, meaning behavior consistent with the 5 vows, which are non-violence, truth, non-stealing, chastity, and non-possession. They do say chastity. So maybe that's in the monks, but I don't think that there would be no population if it was. So I think maybe what they mean by chastity is just maybe not sex for pleasure, but only to have a family. I'm guessing. Jain texts often add samyak tapas, and that's correct asceticism, as a fourth jewel, emphasizing belief in ecstatic practices as the means to liberation, or moksha. The four jewels are called moksha marj, the path of liberation. So yeah, that's the path that you want to get on if you're in the Jain religion, if you want to escape, being reborn. So the main principles, again, are nonviolence to all of creation, which is fairly obvious from what I've said, and one must neither kill another living being nor cause another to kill, nor consent to any killing, directly or indirectly. So if you have nothing to do with killing of anything, including nonviolence against all beings, not only in action but also in speech and in thought, which has connections to Zoroastrianism. It states that instead of hate or violence against anyone, all living creatures must help each other. So that's good stuff. Jains believe that violence negatively affects and destroys one's soul. Absolutely. Particularly when the violence is done with intent, hate, or carelessness, or one directly causes or consents to the killing of a human or non-human living being. So how do they eat? I don't know. So, many-sided reality. The second main principle is many-sidedness and vajja, or, well, they are vegetarians, but I mean, how do they eat even vegetables? But whatever. So, the second main principle is many-sidedness and vajja, or a doctrine. The doctrine states that truth and reality are complex and always have multiple aspects. So anytime you're trying to pin down the truth, there's always different ways to look at it. So there's partial expression of the truth that can be fully expressed through language and may be valid in some respect, but incomplete. So whatever you state to be true, in some sense it might be true, but there's always some way to look at it that is not true. Kind of like following the rules of music. First you learn the rules, then you learn how to break them all. It concludes that spiritual truths can be experienced, but not fully expressed. The great error is belief in akanto, or one-sidedness, where some relative truth is treated as absolute. The doctrine holds a qualified yes, but not the middle way of Buddha. It yet is rejecting extremes of the answer, it is or it is not, to metaphysical questions. So again, answering these kind of metaphysical questions, it's not like the Buddha where you have the middle way. There's a qualified yes or no. So it is and it is not. So qualified with perhaps to understand absolute reality. So when you're trying to understand that there's conditions based on anything that you say which may or may be true in some context. So the permanent being is conceptualized as jiva, soul, and ajiva, matter, within a dualistic framework. Again, so we have soul and matter. Basically soul, your spirit being, your soul, and matter meaning your body. But non-attachment, aparagratha, or graha, the third main principle is non-attachment to worldly possessions. For monks and nuns, avow complete non-possession of any property, relations, and emotions. The ascetic, even emotions. The ascetic is a wandering or resident mendicant, which is beggar, basically. Laypersons, it recommends limited possessions of property that has been honestly earned and giving excess property to charity, both the material and the psychic. So it's kind of like the way of the Essenes, or even the early Christians. They were living in a community, like I did on the video on the Essenes. Material possessions refer to various forms of property. Psychic, they're even talking about psychic possessions, refer to emotions, likes and dislikes, and attachments of any form. So don't get attached to anyone, even emotionally, even to your wife or husband. That's what it sounds like it's saying. Unchecked attachment to possessions is said to result in direct harm to one's personality. So if you're attached, and there's a lot of truth to that. If you're attached to it, then when you lose it, you have great expectations that it's going to be there, and when you lose it, then what ends up happening? A lot of suffering. So you could even look at it as your spouse. If a spouse is a blessing, why you have that blessing? But if you're too attached to your spouse, then when your spouse is gone, then there's a misery and anguish that life is incomplete without your spouse. So there's definitely, and this is not just Jain, this is just, Christian, any religion that involves detachment is going to basically have that kind of ideology. Buddhism, it doesn't matter what it is. So Jain ethics and 5 vows. So there's yamas and the 5 yamas. So Jainism teach 5 ethical duties, which calls 5 vows. Small vows for Jain laypersons and great vows for Jain mendicants. So those are the ones that are, well, the mendicants again are the beggars. But that's like the spiritual ones, okay? The ones that are really want to gain, rise up in the ladder of, in their ascent to perhaps attain liberation. So for both, the Jain has access to a guru or teacher or counselor. The Deva is a genie or a god, Jina, and the doctrine, and that the individual is free from 5 offenses. So you want to have, these are the vows you want to be free of. You want to be doubts about the faith, indecisiveness about the truths of Jainism, since you need to be sincere, desire for Jain teachings, and the recognition of fellow Jains, and the admiration for their spiritual pursuits. And such a person undertakes the 5 vows. So asceticism and monasticism are options, with concerns about food and fasting and participation in festivals. So in Jainism, meditation is concerned more with stopping karmic attachment and activity. There is a sense of Om, so vibrations and uttering Om, but not as a means to transformation in transformational insights or self-realization in other Indian religions. So, and may involve a practice of brief periods of meditation, such as ritual restraint and charity, and participation in rituals and worship involving numerous deities, especially the Jinas, the highest state of omniscience that an ascetic Tirthankara has achieved. So in other words, it's more about what I just said. It's not about self-realization like in Indian or in Christian, illumination or anything like that. It's more about the other, they're concerned with stopping karmic attachments. That's what their meditation is really more about. So it has to do with restraint and charity, the rituals. So there's the ceremonial bath of the images, and then there's priestly duties at the temple, and they have offerings such as rice, fresh and dry fruits, flowers, coconut sweets, and money. And there's the lighting of a lamp with camphor, and they make marks with a sandalwood paste. So they're lighting of a candle. That signifies in a lot of religions spirituality, enlightenment. But devotees recite the Jain text, particularly the life stories of the Tirthankaras. So the scriptures and texts. So the main articles in Jain literature, you have Jain canonical scriptures are called agamas, and verbally transmitted originate from the sermons of the Tirthankaras, whereupon the chief disciples transmitted them as heard knowledge. So they were way back, these ancient, and they were transmitted orally. They believe that they have preserved 45 of the 50 original Jain scriptures, having lost an Anga test and 4 Puvra tests, while the others believe that all were lost, so they don't agree on what they have. And that Akara Bhuttabala was the last ascetic who had partial knowledge of the original canon. The Digambara texts partially agree with older Svetambara texts, but there are also gross differences between the texts of the 2 major Jain traditions. So they can't agree on the text and the like I said, gross differences. So they're not even minor differences. In some areas, they're major differences. So the Digambaras created a secondary canon between 600 and 900 CE, compiled into 4 groups of Vedas, which involve history, cosmography, philosophy, and ethics. The most popular and influential texts of Jainism have been its non-canonical literature. The Kalpa Sutras are particularly popular among Tirthankaras, which they attributed to Bhadrabu, 300 BCE. This ancient scholar is revered in the Digambara tradition, and they believe he led their migration into the ancient South Karnataka region and created their tradition. Okay, so that's it about the Jain religion. And again, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, there's an option to subscribe. I know a lot more about Jain. That was one religion I didn't really know much about. A lot of the other ones I knew a fair amount, but this one I really knew very little about, so it was enormously helpful to me to get an understanding of the Jain religion and how they think and operate and what their motives are, what they think about this world, and so so an option to subscribe and check out my music. So it's on the About page of this channel, and you just look for the links, you hit the links, and you can find all about my music. Maybe even sing some yourself.